So I'm sure, like me, many of you were incredibly confused this morning because the data we got back should have made the market boom, but it didn't. In fact, prices moved the opposite direction. We saw essentially a sea of red across the crypto market. Not bad, but I've been trying to figure out all day why this is in fact the case. And I almost wonder if this report being so good caused some questions. There are some other possibilities that are coming on top of this as well that we're going to talk about in this video. So we're looking at Bitcoin. We did in fact see a drop. We're down about 3.7% on the daily candle. We are currently still within structure. Yes, we did breach this. We had bounced back, and understand that throughout the space, although we had a retracement and some selling and some profit taking that took place, we have bounced back in terms of most assets. Just a couple I talk about here on the channel. ADA up to that 60.5 cent range. SHIB sitting at about 11,660. XRP about $1.96. Kind of around that 2 to 4% range across most assets in the decline today. And really, this was shocking because we had such good news yesterday about the 90-day pause that the market absolutely ripped. We saw most assets again, 10, 15, 20% rise. And this news of us crushing expectations, crushing the CPI report expectations, should have pumped the market further. Now, the projections were us to see actually inflation fall to 2.6% over the last 12 months, but we actually came in at 2.4%. March was actually a month of deflation, negative 0.1%. That's actually a pretty big deal. So where we really saw a big bulk of these prices dropping was right here in energy, in fuel, in oil, like we were talking about. And that's not surprising because we have in fact seen the price per barrel on oil significantly dropping off as of late. There were a few things that were still a little bit sticky. Actually, if we look at food, for example, this is some of the highest months of inflation we've seen on food over the last 6 months. All right. Now, something that did surprise me, used vehicle prices actually down a little bit. That kind of bucked the trend. I was definitely surprised to hear that and see that. And what was really high was actually utility gas service. All right. So there were a few things on this report that were still a little sticky. Oil was the big thing that drug this down, and that may have caused some questions. But I think the overall drop in general may have raised some additional questions. Is this a strange outlier month because of all the tariff news? That's probably a question that's running through a lot of people's minds. So now we run this question of, hey, is this in fact a delayed fuse to tomorrow? Because tomorrow we're actually going to have the PPI report. So we're actually going to see, are producers seeing this same type of drop off in terms of price, or was that just high? Is it just on the consumer side where people just having pause because of the tariff news? I think tomorrow, frankly, is going to bring a lot of clarity, but we also have this potential that there's huge manipulation in the market. We know that this has been very present for quite some time, and it's possible that there could have been manipulation to kind of hold the market back today. I will say, when we look across the crypto market on today, it's not a huge day in terms of volume. So I lean less towards manipulation, and I lean more towards there being questions, right? Is this, again, an outlier? Like we saw the jobs report back in, I can't remember if it was December or November or whatever, where it looked like crap. And this time's an outlier where it looks really good. Okay. And I don't mean to confuse a lot of people, but these are the questions we need to ask ourselves, right? What is the overwhelming sentiment? That's probably what a lot of people are looking at today. Now, what I will say is that I think a lot of people got really, really confident after yesterday. And this is why I was saying, we're not out of the woods yet. We still have a ways to go. We need good reports, which we did get, but unfortunately the longs kind of crept up in terms of BTC and most other assets right up against the bottom of BTC. Shorts didn't really fill in that way. And then of course, market makers push price to the downside, or people selling push price to the downside. Now, the good news is that we did get a nice little bounce here in terms of BTC. We're kind of flat around these ranges, and shorts now have started to creep in above here. So this is where, in fact, instead of seeing a pump today, we could, in fact, see a pump tomorrow. That could mean great movement once again in terms of alts, great movement once again in terms of BTC, a potential retest at the top of our trend, which is actually getting pretty tight now. What we're talking about is basically this 79.5K range up to 82. That's not a lot of room for BTC to move before it decides which direction it's going to head. But what I have to say is this is, we're starting to see a lot of this data come back good. We're starting to, again, quiet down in terms of the tariff noise. There's a lot of stuff that, again, is putting a little more wind in our sails. And again, we're not there yet. All right. Understand that. we're getting closer and closer to a boom, but it's still taking time to build that confidence back up in the crypto market. Even when we're looking at what took place yesterday, it only moved us to a 25 in terms of the overall fear greed index. So it's a good move out of the extreme fear range, but we're still kind of waiting where most of the market is just sitting on the sidelines and not just diving in, with a full head of steam. Just take a look at USDT dominance. We came down to about, 5.5% yesterday, but back up to about 5.75%. So stables are even staying a little sticky here. And it's not, people are basically dipping their toes in the market. They're not just diving in head first. Okay. That's where we're at right now. Yes, this was a good report today, but we're going to have to wait and see if the other data that we're getting from a macro standpoint continues to confirm this. Does the PPI report tomorrow show this? Does the PCE report later this month show this? Does the GDP report for Q1 later this month show this as well? All right. Those are the big things we have to pay attention to. But any good news at this time, I will take. Relief rallies in the market, I will take. And that's probably what was going on today. So I appreciate you guys as always. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts below. Again, show your support if you haven't. Hit that subscribe button. Appreciate you as always. Have a great day. Catch you guys in the next one. Take care.